Look under your bikes. A little girl's desperate warning uncovers a deadly trap, turning a motorcycle club's ordinary morning into a fight for survival. This is a story of fierce protection, hidden enemies, and the unexpected bond that forms in the shadow of violence. If you're new here, subscribe and comment your location. Now let's begin. The sun baked the asphalt of the Roadhouse parking lot. The air smelled of gasoline, oil, and coffee. The Hells Angels, or as they called themselves, the Iron Kings, were finishing their breakfast. Their leader, Daniel, a big man with a beard and calm eyes, wiped his mouth. His second, Mark, was already on his bike, a polished Harley that gleamed like a weapon. "All right, boys," Daniel said, his voice a low rumble. "We roll in 5. We've got that meet with the warehouse suppliers. Paul, you have the inventory list." Paul, a wiry man with sharp eyes, nodded, tapping his leather vest pocket. It was a normal morning. James was teasing David about a girl from the last town. Big Tom was checking his engine. It was loud and normal, and for a moment, it was just a group of friends getting ready to ride. Then a small shadow fell across Daniel's bike. He looked down. A little girl stood there. She couldn't have been more than 7. She had messy brown hair and wore a faded yellow dress. She stared up at him with huge, serious eyes. She wasn't smiling. "Hey, sweetheart," Daniel said, his voice softening. He wasn't a monster. "You lost. Where's your mom?" The girl didn't answer. She just pointed a small finger straight at the underside of Daniel's motorcycle. "Look under your bikes," she whispered. Then she said it again, louder, her voice cutting through the engine noise. "Look under your bikes." The men went quiet. Mark killed his engine. The sudden silence was heavy. James frowned. "What's she talking about, Danny?" Daniel held the little girl's gaze. Her eyes were terrified, but she stood her ground. She wasn't playing. He'd seen that look before, but on much older faces. He slowly got off his bike and crouched, his knees popping. He looked under the massive frame of his Harley. At first he saw nothing, just shadows and the clean black metal. Then, near the front fork, tucked up inside like a dark little tumor, he saw it, a small black box. It had a tiny green light on it, blinking slowly. A thin wire ran from it to a small, flat disc stuck to the oil tank, a microphone. His blood went cold. "Mark," Daniel said, his voice now tight. "Check yours. Now, everyone, check your bikes. Don't touch anything." The parking lot exploded into movement. Big men in leather dropped to the hot pavement, peering under their machines. Curses filled the air. "Son of a... I've got one. Here too." Every single bike, every single one, had a listening device, and not just mics. David found a small GPS tracker glued inside his fender. Paul found another one zip-tied to his frame. Daniel stood up, his face like stone. He looked at the little girl. She was shivering now. He knelt again, this time in front of her. "What's your name, honey?" "Lucy," she whispered. "Lucy, who put these here, Lucy?" She shook her head, tears welling up. "I don't know their names, the men in the black vans. They came last night when it was very dark. They were under all the bikes for a long time. I saw from my window." She pointed to a small, rundown apartment building across the street. "My mom, she works nights. I was alone." Mark walked over, his face grim. "They heard everything, Danny. Last night's meeting, the warehouse plans, the route we just discussed 5 minutes ago. A trap. It was a perfect trap. Someone knew they'd be here. Someone had planted the bugs to listen, to know their plans, their route, their numbers. And then, what? An ambush, police raid, a rival crew waiting to pick them off one by one on a lonely road." Daniel felt a cold fury settle in his gut. They had almost ridden straight into it. Because of a little girl who couldn't sleep, their empire, their family, was still standing. "Thank you, Lucy," Daniel said, his voice thick. "You are a very brave girl." He looked at Mark. "We're not going anywhere. We're going to find these guys, right now." The Kings switched gears. They weren't bikers now. They were hunters. They left the devices exactly where they were, but they disconnected the batteries carefully. They wanted the listeners to think they were still active, that the Kings were still clueless. James and David, the fastest and quietest, slipped around the back of the roadhouse. Paul and Big Tom started checking the nearby alleys. Daniel and Mark stayed with Lucy, watching the street. "Did you see where the black vans went, Lucy?" Mark asked gently. She thought, then pointed down the long, empty road heading east out of town. "That way, but they came back this morning. One of them, he's in the phone booth." She pointed to an old, glass-paneled phone booth at the end of the block, nearly hidden by a billboard. Daniel's eyes narrowed. Of course, someone had to be close to monitor the feeds to hear in real time. He gave a low, sharp whistle. Across the street, James's head popped up from behind a dumpster. Daniel made a series of quick hand signals: one watcher, phone booth, flank and contain. James nodded and vanished. Daniel looked at Lucy. "Lucy, I need you to be even braver. Can you go back to your apartment, lock the door, and not look out the window, no matter what you hear?" She nodded, her big eyes on his. Then she turned and ran, her little feet slapping the pavement, disappearing into the dark doorway of her building. Now it was time. Daniel and Mark walked casually towards the phone booth. They looked like they were just stretching their legs. Inside the booth, a man in a dark jacket had his back to them. He was wearing an earpiece and talking softly into the phone. "No, the signal is still good. They're just finishing up, sounds like. Yeah, they're about to roll out on the planned route. The Eagles are in position. Good." The Eagles, a rival crew from the next county, violent, sloppy, and hungry for the King's territory, they were the ambush. Just as they reached the booth, James and David stepped out from behind the billboard, blocking the other side. The man in the booth saw their reflection in the glass. He froze. Daniel yanked the booth door open. It was a tight fit with his size. The man, weasel-faced and pale, stared up at him in pure shock. "Conference call?" Daniel asked, his voice dangerously quiet. He plucked the earpiece from the man's ear and put it in his own. He heard static, then a voice. "Confirm they are moving. Our boys are getting antsy out here on Route 9. Daniel smiled. It wasn't a nice smile. He spoke into the man's phone, his tone mimicking boredom. "Yeah, they're moving, rolling out now, everything's green." He hung up the phone. The weasel-faced man tried to speak. "I don't know anything, I was just paid to." Mark slapped a big hand over his mouth. "Quiet, you're coming with us." They dragged him into the alley behind the roadhouse. It didn't take long. A few promises of what would happen if he lied, and the man, whose name was Felix, spilled everything. The Eagles had paid him to plant the bugs and monitor. They were waiting with 3 trucks full of men on Route 9, the exact road the Kings planned to take to the warehouse. They had guns. They planned to block the road and take the Kings down in one messy, violent strike. "They wanted your territory, the warehouses, the trucking routes, all of it," Felix whined, rubbing his arm where James held him. Daniel looked at his men. The rage was there, but so was a cold, clear plan. "They're waiting for us on Route 9, so we won't go to Route 9. Paul grinned. "We'll go to their place." While they had been talking, David had gone through Felix's pockets. He found a set of keys and a parking stub from a motel on the west side of town, the Sleepy Hollow. Not where the Eagles were waiting, where they were staying. "You don't bring 3 trucks of guys to an ambush from 2 counties over without a home base," David said, dangling the keys. Daniel's smile returned. "Let's return the favor. We'll ruin their day before they even know we're not coming." They tied up Felix and stuffed him in the roadhouse's meat freezer after telling the owner, a friend, to keep him there for a few hours. Then they mounted up, but they didn't head east to Route 9. They went west into town towards the Sleepy Hollow Motel. The ride was tense but focused. They parked their bikes 2 blocks away in the lot of a closed-down church. They moved on foot, splitting into 2 groups. Daniel, Mark, and James went to check the motel. Paul, David, and Big Tom circled around to the back. The Sleepy Hollow was a dump, peeling paint, cracked windows, but in the back parking lot just as they'd hoped were 3 large, unmarked panel vans, the Eagles' transport. And standing by one of them, having a cigarette, was a big, familiar idiot named Crank, an Eagle enforcer. He was laughing with another man. They were relaxed, confident. Their best fighters were out on the ambush. The ones left behind were the B team, thinking today was an easy victory. Daniel nodded to Mark. This was the light-hearted moment they needed. Mark, who had a surprising talent, picked up a small rock. He threw it not at the men, but at a metal trash can lid leaning against the wall near them. Clang! The sound was huge in the quiet lot. Crank and his friend jumped, spinning around. What the hell? Probably a cat, you idiot, the other man said, laughing nervously. Clang, another rock, from James's side, hit the same lid. That ain't no cat, Crank yelled, pulling out a knife. From the shadows of a doorway, Daniel spoke, his voice echoing slightly. You're right, Crank, it's the bill collector. Crank went white, he knew that voice. Before he could shout, Mark and James were on them. It wasn't a fair fight. It was fast and quiet and over in seconds. Crank and his friend were disarmed, gagged, and zip-tied to the stairwell railing. Daniel took Crank's phone. He scrolled through the recent calls. Boss, he hit dial. A gruff voice answered. Crank, they there yet? We're baking out here on this damn road. Daniel put on a higher, strained voice, mimicking panic. Boss, it's Crank, the Kings, they're here. At the motel, they knew they're trashing everything. He held the phone away as the man on the other end erupted in screams and curses. What? How? We're coming back. You hold them off, you hear me? Daniel hung up. He looked at his crew, a fierce pride in his eyes. The Eagles are abandoning their ambush on Route 9. They're all coming back here, angry and confused, and they'll find a little surprise. They worked quickly. They didn't have bombs or fancy tricks. They had ingenuity. They let the air out of all the van tires. They siphoned the gas from the van's tanks and from the motel rooms they broke into. They took all the weapons they found, guns, bats, chains, and threw them down a storm drain. They unplugged the motel's main phone line and stole the front desk clerk's cell phone. The clerk was wisely hiding under his desk. It was mischief, but serious mischief. They were dismantling the Eagles' base with the efficiency of a seasoned crew. Just as they were finishing, Daniel's phone buzzed. It was Paul from the other side of the motel. Danny, you need to see this. Room 112, back corner. The tone in Paul's voice was strange, not alarm, but shock. Daniel and Mark went over. The door to room 112 was slightly ajar. Paul stood outside, his face unreadable. It's not weapons, was all he said. Daniel pushed the door open. The room was dark, curtains drawn, but it wasn't a stash house for guns. It was a home, a temporary one. There was a small, neat bed, a coloring book and crayons on the table, a stuffed rabbit on the pillow. And in the corner, a woman was zip-tying the hands of a large, unconscious man sprawled on the floor. She turned as they entered. She was beautiful in a sharp, tired way, dark hair tied back, eyes that had seen too much. She wore jeans and a black tank top. She didn't look scared of them. She looked resigned and fiercely angry. On the floor, the man groaned. Daniel recognized him. That's Viper, the Eagles' treasurer. The woman said, her voice low and steady. She kicked the man lightly. He's a traitor to them and to me. This was getting complicated. Who are you? Daniel asked. Elena, she said, and that man on the floor is the reason I'm here. He took something from me. He took my daughter. Daniel's mind made the connection instantly. Lucy. Elena's eyes snapped to his, wide with fear and hope. You've seen her. Is she safe? She's safe. She's a hero. She just saved all our lives, Mark said softly. Story spilled out of Elena. She was Viper's ex. He was a small-time crook who joined the Eagles for power. When she left him, he took their daughter, Lucy, in the middle of the night to use as leverage to make Elena do jobs for him, like seducing rival gang members for information. She'd been tracking him for months. She followed him here to this motel, knowing he was setting up a big strike against the Iron Kings. She planned to take Lucy and run during the chaos of the ambush. But Lucy, bright and brave, had seen the men planting the devices, and she had acted on her own. I was coming to get her this morning when I saw you all in the parking lot with her, Elena said, her voice breaking. I thought he'd sold her to you or something. I was getting ready to burn this whole place down. Daniel looked at this fierce, desperate woman, and he felt something he hadn't in a long time, a pull, a respect that went straight to his core. The chemistry was instant, a silent understanding between two warriors in a dirty world. "He's not taking anyone ever again," Daniel said, his voice final. He looked at Viper. "The Eagles are on their way back here. What do you think they'll do to a treasurer who brought a kid into a war zone, a kid who then ruined their entire plan?" Elena understood. So did Paul and Mark. They dragged Viper out into the middle of the parking lot. They propped him up against one of the deflated vans. They left him there, groggy and tied up, with a note pinned to his chest. The note just had an eagle symbol crossed out with a pen. Let his own crew deal with him. They could hear the distant roar of motorcycles now. The Eagles were coming back, furious. It was time to go. "Come with us," Daniel said to Elena. It wasn't a question, it was an offer. She hesitated for only a second, looking towards her daughters building across from the roadhouse. Then she nodded. They melted into the back alleys just as the first Eagles trucks screeched into the motel parking lot. The Kings heard the shouts of confusion, then the roars of anger as they found their base disabled and their treasurer waiting for them. A fight broke out immediately among the Eagles, accusations, blame, violence turning inward. The Iron Kings didn't stay to watch. They retrieved their bikes. Daniel sent David to get Lucy from her apartment. The little girl came out, holding her stuffed rabbit, and ran straight into her mother's arms. Elena hugged her so tight, crying silent tears into her hair. Daniel watched them. He looked at Lucy. "You need a safe place, both of you." Elena looked at him, at his crew, at the powerful machines. "Where?" Daniel got on his bike. He handed Elena a spare helmet. He helped Lucy onto Mark's bike, who promised to drive slow and safe. "You're coming to see our empire," Daniel said to Elena, "and you're going to tell me if it's safe enough for the bravest girl I've ever met." They rode out not to a warehouse meeting, but to Daniel's compound on the outskirts of the city, a fortified auto shop and a network of safe apartments. It was the heart of their territory. It was strong. And for the first time, to Daniel, it felt like it needed more than just strength. It needed a heart. As they pulled into the secure garage, the heavy door rolling shut behind them, the tension of the day finally began to ease. The Kings were laughing, clapping each other on the back, telling the story of the little girl and the bugs. Elena held Lucy's hand, looking around at the strange, dangerous, but strangely loyal world she had entered. Daniel walked over to her. The others tactfully busied themselves, giving them space. The air between them was charged, full of unspoken things, gratitude, attraction, a shared understanding of loss and survival. "You have a kingdom," Elena said quietly, looking around. "It's not much," Daniel said, "but it's honest in its own way, and it's defended." He paused. "You could stay, both of you. We have rooms upstairs, safe rooms. The Eagles won't find you here. And if they try," he let the sentence hang. The promise of protection was absolute. Elena looked into his eyes. She saw the man who knelt to talk to her daughter, the leader who turned an ambush into a counter-strike, the danger and the honor. She reached out, her fingers just brushing the leather of his vest near a scar on the sleeve. It was a small touch, but in the quiet of the garage, it felt as loud as a gunshot. It was a promise of something more, something that started in the shadow of violence but could grow in the light of safety. "We'll stay," she whispered, "for now." And for Daniel, for the first time in a long time, his empire didn't just feel like territory to be held. It felt like a home to be built. The garage was alive with noise, but for Daniel and Elena, the world had narrowed to the space between them. Her fingers lingered on his vest. He covered her hand with his own, his calloused palm rough against her skin. The touch was electric, a silent promise in the oily air. "Mommy," Lucy's small voice cut through the moment. She was holding Mark's hand, looking wide-eyed at the row of gleaming motorcycles. Elena pulled her hand back, but her eyes stayed locked on Daniel's. "I'm right here, baby." Daniel took a breath, the spell broken but the connection still humming. "Let's get you settled." He led them through a heavy steel door at the back of the garage, up a narrow flight of stairs to the apartment above the shop. It wasn't fancy. It was clean, with a big living room, a kitchen, and 2 bedrooms. The windows were barred, but the curtains were a soft blue. It felt safe, solid. "This is yours," Daniel said. "Bathroom's there, fridge is stocked. No one gets up here without us knowing." Elena walked to the window, peering out through the bars at the quiet street below. "Thank you," she said, her back to him. It was more than just words. Lucy explored, touching the couch, the table. She looked at Daniel. "Are you a good guy?" The question, so simple, hit him hard. He crouched down. "I try to be, Lucy, especially to people who save my life and my friends' lives." She nodded, satisfied, and went to inspect the smaller bedroom. Daniel stood up. Elena was watching him, a ghost of a smile on her lips. "She doesn't trust easy." "Smart kid," Daniel said. He wanted to stay. He wanted to ask 100 questions, but he saw the exhaustion in Elena's shoulders, the shock finally setting in. "Get some rest. I'll be downstairs. We'll have eyes on the place all night. The Eagles are busy tearing themselves apart right now, but we'll watch." He turned to go. "Daniel." He stopped. "Be careful," she said. Her voice was soft, but her eyes were fierce. It wasn't a plea. It was an order from one fighter to another. He nodded and left, pulling the door shut behind him. He heard the distinct click of the heavy lock engaging. Downstairs, the mood had shifted. The initial laughter was gone, replaced by a focused energy. The Kings were in planning mode. Mark had a laptop open on a workbench, pulling up police scanners and street camera feeds near the Sleepy Hollow. Paul was cleaning a shotgun, his movements methodical. Big Tom was on the phone, talking to their contacts in the towing business, seeing if any Eagle vehicles were being impounded. James looked up as Daniel descended the stairs. "How are they?" "Scared, tired, tough," Daniel summarized. "What's the word on the street?" "It's beautiful," David said with a grim smile. He was monitoring an open channel on an Eagles frequency they'd hacked months ago. Total chaos. They got back to the motel, found Viper trussed up, their van's dead, their guns gone. They're screaming at each other. Sounds like their boss, Razor, thinks Viper set them up for a cut from us. A couple of guys are already talking about splitting off. It's a mess. "That buys us time," Daniel said, "but not much. Once the infighting stops, they'll look for someone to blame, and that's us. They'll also look for Elena and Lucy. Viper will have told them everything by now to save his own skin." "So we hit them first," Mark said, closing the laptop. "We hit them now, while they're weak and confused." Daniel shook his head. "No, we're not the Eagles. We don't just burn everything down, we protect what's ours. Now that includes 2 new people upstairs. We fortify, we make this place a fortress, and we send a message." "What message?" Paul asked. "That the girl is under our protection, that touching her or her mother is a declaration of war not just on the Kings, but on a line they don't get to cross." Daniel's voice was low and absolute. "We find out where the Eagles' real money is, their protection rackets, their 2-bit drug deals, and we dismantle it, brick by brick. We don't attack their men, we starve their empire." It was a smarter, slower plan. It took patience. It was how the Kings had built their territory in the first place, not just with fists, but with strategy. For the next week, life at the auto shop settled into a strange new rhythm. The Kings went about their business, legitimate repairs in the front, strategic moves in the back. Elena and Lucy stayed upstairs. Lucy, after the first 2 days of shyness, became the shop's unofficial mascot. James taught her how to check motorcycle tire pressure. Big Tom showed her how to polish chrome without leaving streaks. She brought a lightness to the place that had been missing. Elena was more guarded. She helped around the apartment, cooked meals for the crew, a gesture that shocked the men into polite, grateful silence. She and Daniel circled each other, conversations over coffee in the morning, shared looks across the garage, a charged silence when they passed in the hallway. One night, a week after they arrived, Daniel was in the garage late, going over supply manifests. The rest of the crew had gone to their own homes or the rooms in the back. The place was quiet, just the hum of the freezer and the distant city sounds. He heard soft footsteps on the stairs. Elena appeared, wrapped in a blanket over her tank top and shorts. Her feet were bare. "Can't sleep?" he asked. "Lucy's out like a light, dreaming of motorcycles, I think," she said, a small smile touching her lips. She walked over, leaning against the workbench near him. "I keep listening for black vans." "You won't hear them. We have lookouts 3 blocks out in every direction. You're safe here." "I know," she said, and she seemed to mean it. She studied his face in the low light. "You're not what I expected." "What did you expect?" "An animal, like viper, like razor, just bigger." Daniel put down his pen. "And what am I?" "A man," she said simply. "A dangerous one, but a man with a code. It's confusing." He moved closer. The space between them crackled. He could see the pulse in her throat. "It doesn't have to be confusing." She didn't back away. "Doesn't it? My daughter is upstairs. My life is in pieces. You're a criminal kingpin." "I'm a businessman who sometimes has to get his hands dirty to protect what's his," he corrected, his voice a murmur. "And right now, you and Lucy are what's mine to protect." The word mine hung in the air, heavy with possession and promise. Elena's breath hitched. She reached up, her hand cupping the side of his rough, bearded face. It was the first time she had initiated touch. The kiss wasn't gentle. It was pent up, a week of tension and stolen glances exploding into heat. It was hungry and desperate, a collision of 2 lonely, hardened souls finding an anchor. His hands gripped her waist, pulling her against him, her fingers tangled in his hair, the blanket pooled at their feet. It was charged, full of adult need and years of loneliness, but it was also safe. It was in the heart of his fortress. It was a choice. They broke apart, breathing heavily, foreheads resting together. "Elena," he started, his voice rough. "SHHH," she whispered, placing a finger on his lips. "No promises, not yet, just this for now." She took his hand and led him back up the stairs, past Lucy's closed door and into her bedroom. The door closed softly behind them. The next morning, things were different. A new understanding flowed between Daniel and Elena, a softness in his eyes when he looked at her, a calmness in her posture when he was near. The crew noticed, exchanging subtle nods and smiles. It felt right. But the outside world hadn't stopped. 2 days later, the message came. One of their lookouts called in. A single black van was circling the block. Not an attack, a scout. "They're testing us," Mark said, cracking his knuckles. "It's time to send our message back," Daniel said. He had a plan. They waited until dark. Daniel, Mark, and Paul rode out, not on their loud hogs, but on quiet, dark-painted bikes. They followed the black van to a seedy bar on the east side, an Eagles hangout. They didn't go in. Instead, Daniel took a wrapped package from his bike. Inside was a GPS unit, one of the ones they'd pulled from their own bikes the day Lucy saved them. He turned it on. He also placed a small, crude drawing on top of it, made by Lucy that afternoon. It was a stick figure girl holding hands with a big stick figure man on a motorcycle with a bright yellow sun. On the back, Elena had written a single sentence in clear, bold letters. "She is under the dragon's wing. Look and you will burn." The dragon was the symbol on the king's patch. Daniel walked to the black van, which was empty, its driver inside the bar. He placed the package squarely on the driver's seat, propped against the steering wheel. He made sure the GPS's little green light was blinking, a clear sign it was active and transmitting a signal right back to their shop. It was a dual message. The drawing and the note were the warning: "We have the girl, she is loved, she is protected." The active GPS was the threat: "We found your scout with ease, we can find anything, we are watching." They rode away into the night. The effect was immediate. The Eagles' chatter on the radio went silent for a full 24 hours. When it resumed, it was different. The talk of revenge was still there, but now it was mixed with caution. A new word entered their conversations: dragon. The message had been received. A week passed in tense peace, then the final move. Daniel's plan to starve the Eagles was working. Their collection payments were being intercepted. Their drug dealers were being scared off by anonymous tips to the police. Their money was drying up. Razor, the Eagles' boss, was backed into a corner. He had 2 choices: all-out war against a fortified, prepared enemy protecting a moral high ground, a little girl, or a retreat. He chose the only smart option left. The offer came through a neutral party, an old bartender who knew everyone, a meet, neutral ground, just Razor and Daniel, to talk. Daniel agreed, but on his terms. The meet would be at the Roadhouse in broad daylight, the same place where it had all started with Lucy's warning. The day of the meet, the atmosphere at the shop was thick. Elena stood in front of Daniel as he strapped on a lightweight Kevlar vest over his shirt. She didn't speak. She just straightened his collar, her hands steady, her eyes searching his. "You come back," she said finally. It was that same order, laced now with something deeper, something that clutched at his heart. "Always," he promised. He kissed her hard and quick, a seal on the vow. He rode to the Roadhouse with Mark and Paul as shadows, watching from a distance. He walked in alone. Razor was already there, sitting at a booth. He was a thin, sharp-faced man with cruel eyes. He looked tired, defeated already. Daniel slid into the booth across from him. No handshakes. "The girl," Razor said, skipping greetings. "She's yours." "She is," Daniel said. "And the woman, any problem with that?" Razor's jaw tightened. He'd lost face, and they both knew it. Viper was a fool, bringing a kid into business. It's bad for everyone's image. He was trying to save face, to make it sound like a principal. Daniel just stared, letting the silence stretch. Razor broke. "We're pulling back. Out of the south side warehouses, out of the trucking routes. We keep what we have north of the river. You keep what you have here. The girl is forgotten, a non-issue." It was a surrender, a territorial concession to end the conflict. Daniel leaned forward. The listening devices, the planned ambush, that was an act of war. You don't get to just walk away and keep your clubhouse. You pay a toll. Razor's eyes flashed with anger. What toll? 20% of your north side bar profits for the next year, delivered quietly each month. You think of it as reparations. I think of it as you funding the college fund of the girl you tried to make an orphan. It was brutal. It was a financial leash. It would weaken the Eagles for a long time, ensuring they couldn't rebuild to strike again soon. Razor looked like he wanted to spit, but he looked at Daniel's cold, calm eyes and saw no room for negotiation. He saw the dragon, wide awake and breathing fire. He nodded once, a sharp, jerky movement. "Done." "Good," Daniel said. He stood up. "The drones watching my place, call them off. If I see so much as an eagle patch on my street again, the deal is off, and we finish this the old way." He walked out into the sunlight. He took a deep breath, the clean air washing away the stink of the booth. He got on his bike and rode home. When he pulled into the garage, the whole crew was there, waiting. Elena stood at the front, Lucy beside her holding Big Tom's hand. Daniel killed the engine. The silence was complete. He looked at Elena. "It's over, they're gone, they won't bother you ever again." The relief that washed over her face was a physical thing. Her shoulders slumped, and a single tear traced a path down her cheek. Lucy ran forward and hugged Daniel's leg. He scooped her up, holding the little girl who had changed everything. He looked over her head at Elena. "You're free, you can go anywhere, you have no debt here." Elena walked towards him, her eyes shining. She placed a hand on Lucy's back and looked up at Daniel. "And if we want to stay?" Daniel's heart, a muscle he thought had hardened to stone, swelled in his chest. He looked around at his shop, his crew, his empire. It wasn't just steel and engines and territory anymore. It was a home. It had a future. "Then you stay," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "For as long as you want. This is your home now, both of you." He set Lucy down, and she ran to show James a new rock she'd found. Daniel took Elena's face in his hands and kissed her, there in the middle of the garage, in front of his whole family. It was a kiss of peace, of victory, of a beginning. The little girl under the yellow sun in the drawing was safe. The dragon's wing was wide and strong, and the empire, now with a heart beating firmly in its center, was stronger than it had ever been. Thank you for riding with us through this story. Would you risk everything to protect a stranger's child? Let us know where you're watching from in the comments. If this story of loyalty and unexpected courage gripped you, hit subscribe for more tailies, where the toughest exteriors hide the strongest hearts.